Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive, a place where forgotten stories breathe again, where whispers crawl from the cracks of reality, and fear finds a voice. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely, because some tales were never meant to be told. Tonight's story is titled The Hollow That Watched. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. The Whispering Spoon. When's the miracle kid coming? I asked, more out of boredom than curiosity. Uncle Ben's eyes narrowed as he scraped burnt egg from the bottom of the skillet. Don't call her that. Across from me, Grandpa Saul let out a dry chuckle, coughing through a cloud of phlegm. Miracle Maya. Enough. Ben snapped, banging the spatula against the pan. The cramped kitchen of our second-floor walk-up felt even tighter when things got tense. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. 7th grade hadn't taught me much, but I sure as hell knew what Grandpa was about to say. I leaned over the back of Grandpa's battered wheelchair, arms folded, chin resting on my forearms. The wheels were locked, not that he had the strength to go anywhere. Still, I stayed close. The man might be ancient, but he was a walking history book. Well, mostly walking. Ben set the pan aside and turned toward us. You need to behave, both of you. The girl's been through enough. Girl, Grandpa said with a wheeze, wasn't always a girl. She was a soldier once. A killer. Ben massaged his temples. Don't start with that again. She's not the first to come back wrong. I stared at Grandpa, unsure if he was serious or just unraveling again. You mean like possessed? He turned his good eye toward me, the cloudy one drifting off toward the cupboard. Not possessed. Inhabited. There's a difference. By what? The hollow. Ben let out a deep breath. Daniel, help your grandfather to the living room. I need to clean up before they arrive. I'm staying right here, Grandpa said, his hand landing with a surprising thud on the rusty tin box resting on his lap. It had been pulled from the attic last week. Ben wasn't happy about it. Dented edges, military green flaked away, 2 latches rusted shut until Grandpa used his old army knife. I hadn't seen inside yet. He told me it was medals, photos, old war garbage. But it thudded like something heavier, denser. Like metal or bone. What's in the box? I asked. Ben didn't look up. Nothing you need to see. Grandpa leaned forward slightly. It belonged to Private Keller. No next of kin. No grave either. Just the box. Ben finally turned, eyes narrowed. Let it go, Dad. You don't bury what doesn't stay dead. I didn't know what to say to that. I scratched behind my ear the way I always do when the room gets too quiet. Is this like one of your old war stories? No, Grandpa said. This one's still happening. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The Roth family had arrived. Ben smoothed down the front of his shirt and adjusted his kippah. He didn't believe in miracles, not really. But when a 10-year-old girl gets shot in the heart during a mass shooting and walks out of the hospital a week later without a scratch, well, even a rabbi starts to wonder. He welcomed them in with a quiet shalom. They nodded, their faces pale and polite. Mr. Roth's eyes were hollow behind thick glasses. Mrs. Roth's skirt brushed the floor as she guided her daughter forward. The girl was small, smaller than I expected. Red dress, hair so black it swallowed the light. She walked like she was being pulled forward by strings, stiff and silent. Her name is Eliana, Ben said softly, almost reverently. Grandpa squinted toward her. That's not her name. Ben shot him a warning glare. I want to see her, Grandpa said. Turn me. I hesitated. Are you sure? Do it, soldier. The old man's hands were shaking, but his voice was solid. I gripped the chair and forced it around, dragging the stuck wheel over the tiles. Grandpa's box clanged against the side of the counter. Eliana was staring at nothing, or maybe at everything. Her gaze swept the room, resting on no one. Her eyes were the color of bruises, not purple but that dark shadow beneath the skin where something used to be. She stopped just inside the kitchen's threshold. Then she sniffed the air, slow and deliberate. Grandpa whispered, "She smells it." I looked around. Smells what? The gunpowder. The memories. Ben ushered the Roths toward his study, murmuring something about trauma counseling. But Eliana didn't follow. Her head turned sharply toward Grandpa, her eyes sharpening. "She sees the box," he said. Eliana took a step forward. Mrs. Roth reached for her, but the girl didn't respond. Another step. Ben noticed. "Eliana, sweetie, let's go talk, all right?" She ignored him. Grandpa's fingers moved to the latches. "Don't," Ben warned. "They need to know." The lid creaked open with a metallic groan. Inside wasn't a medal or photo. It was a long black object, wrapped in old cloth and twine. Grandpa unraveled it slowly. A spoon. No, not a spoon. A tool of some kind. Carved metal, shaped like a ladle, but with engraved Hebrew along the handle. It shimmered faintly, like it had been pulled from something still burning. "What the hell is that?" I asked. "Eliana," Grandpa called out, holding it up. "What do you remember?" The girl's head tilted. Her lips parted and something like a breath escaped. But it wasn't words. It was a sound, like wind through an empty hallway. A distant scream buried in snow. A groan from deep underground. Mrs. Roth grabbed her daughter's shoulder and Eliana flinched violently. She spun, grabbed her mother's wrist and stared into her eyes. Her mouth moved, slow and stiff, and for the first time she spoke. But it wasn't her voice. It was a man's. In Hebrew. Ben went pale. What did she say?" I asked. Ben's voice trembled. "She said, 'You left me in the trench.'" Grandpa clutched the spoon like a weapon. "It remembers." Eliana turned her head slowly toward him. Her eyes burned black. Part 2. Echoes beneath the floorboards. Ben slammed the study door behind the Roths, and I could hear the muffled sounds of hurried whispers on the other side. Eliana hadn't followed. She was still in the kitchen, still facing Grandpa, still clutching her mother's shawl like it was some kind of leash holding her in place. Except now the girl wasn't moving. She stood motionless in the doorway, her chest barely rising with breath. Her eyes, no longer glassy or distant, stared directly at Grandpa's trembling hand and the strange dark ladle he held. "She's anchoring," Grandpa murmured. "Anchoring?" I echoed. He didn't answer, or couldn't. His body had tensed, spine rigid, like something old and buried inside him was waking up. Eliana took a single step. The lights above us flickered. The cheap overhead bulb hummed, then dimmed as if something was drawing the power into itself. The air in the room turned sharp and coppery, like licking a battery. She opened her mouth. No sound, but her shadow moved. I swear to God, her shadow rippled. It stretched, bent, and twisted across the floor, not with the overhead light, but as if it were acting on its own. It reached toward the tin box like a starving dog toward a slab of meat. "What is she?" I whispered. Grandpa's good eye darted to mine. "Not she. It." The spoon in his hand began to vibrate. Not violently, but steadily, like a tuning fork struck against bone. "She's the hollow?" I asked. "She's what comes after," he replied. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe a jump scare or screaming or another flashback. But none of that happened. Instead, Eliana began to cry. Soft, pitiful sobs. She took another step, then dropped to her knees like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Her mother burst through the door behind us. Eliana. Mrs. Roth rushed forward, but I held up my arm instinctively. Don't, I said. She looked at me like I was insane. That's my daughter. She's not your daughter right now. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure what I meant. But the way Eliana's fingers were twitching, curling, digging into the floor tiles, it felt wrong. Like something was trying to use her bones as levers. Grandpa leaned down, holding the spoon out like a cross before a vampire. Eliana, he said, do you know where you are? She looked up and smiled. Not like a child. Not like anyone. Her teeth showed too much, her lips peeling back too far. A grin that belonged on a corpse nailed to a battlefield wall. You left me, she said, but it wasn't her voice. It was Keller's. I knew it without knowing why. Gravelly, broken. A voice drowned in blood and dirt. I died in mud. Grandpa's face crumpled. No, I tried. You ran. Eliana lunged, but not at Grandpa, at me. She crossed the space between us in a heartbeat, her small frame moving like a marionette with a drunk puppeteer. I stumbled backward, crashing into the counter, grabbing for anything to use. My hand found the box. It was cold, unnaturally cold. I flung it forward just as Eliana reached me. The moment the box touched her, she screamed. Not a child's scream, a banshee's. Her entire body convulsed. The lights exploded above us, raining sparks. Mrs. Roth shrieked, shielding herself as Eliana collapsed in a heap. Then silence. Utter, total silence. I was gasping, heart thudding like a jackhammer. Eliana didn't move. Grandpa dropped the spoon. I told them, he whispered. I told them it never died, that the trench never closed. Ben burst through the door at last, out of breath, wide-eyed. What happened? I looked at Eliana, then at the tin box. It came back, I said. Through her. Mrs. Roth knelt beside her daughter. Eliana was breathing. Barely. But she was herself again, whatever that meant now. Ben stared at the mess, at the broken light, at the twisted spoon lying on the floor. He picked it up, hesitated, then turned to Grandpa. What the hell is this? Grandpa didn't answer, because Grandpa was crying. But the tears didn't fall from his eyes. They seeped from the scar on his chest. Part 3. The Scarred Psalm. Eliana didn't speak again that night. She lay curled on the living room carpet, knees to her chest, eyes open but seeing nothing. Her breath came shallow but steady. Mrs. Roth cradled her, whispering prayers in Hebrew under her breath, as if the words could mend what medicine couldn't touch. I stood in the hallway, still gripping the door frame like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Ben hovered over Grandpa, who hadn't moved from his chair. The spoon lay between them on the floor, still humming faintly. Not vibrating now, just a slow metallic whine, like the echo of a dying engine. What was that? Ben asked again, softer this time. Grandpa didn't look at him. He was staring at the floor, or through it. I told them it needed to be buried, he said. Who? Ben demanded. The army? Rabbis? The government? No, the ones who knew. Grandpa finally lifted his eyes. The ones who used it first. Ben didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. We sat at the kitchen table, the two of us alone. The clock on the wall ticked louder than normal, like every second was being dragged against its will. Eliana and her parents were still in the spare room. Grandpa had refused to go to bed. He sat upright in the wheelchair, the tin box shut again and tied with a cord he pulled from his bathrobe. He hadn't blinked in an hour. Ben rubbed his eyes. You know, I studied the Book of the Dead, right? Not Egypt, ours. The real one. I nodded slowly. Well, there's no mention of spoons that summon ghosts. It wasn't just a spoon, I said. No, he agreed. It was a conduit. He leaned in. Tell me the truth. That voice, Eliana's voice, did you hear what it said? I nodded. Who was Keller? Grandpa answered that the next morning, he told us a story, not like the bedtime kind, not even one of his usual war stories. This one was different. We were stationed outside a village in the Ardennes. He began, voice low and gravelly. Winter of 45. Cold enough to freeze piss before it hit the ground. We'd been chasing ghosts, rumors of Nazi units that never surrendered. But what we found wasn't German. He paused. There was this trench, he said. Didn't appear on any map. Carved like fingers into the earth, long and deep, like something dug its way out instead of in. I felt my skin prickle. We sent Keller down to scout it. Private Jacob Keller. Quiet kid. Yale student. Volunteered in 43 after Kristallnacht killed his cousins in Vienna. He didn't come back up. He looked away. When we went after him, we found his rifle first, then his boots, then his body. Ben frowned. Dead? No, Grandpa said. Wrong. According to him, Keller had changed. When they pulled him out, he was breathing, but his eyes were clouded, and he spoke a dialect no one could place. His skin was cold. Dirt kept falling from his mouth like it was pouring up from his gut. He didn't recognize any of them, just kept whispering the same sentence over and over. Yishkin beats El Shaddai. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, Ben translated. Grandpa nodded. Psalm 91. But he said it wrong. Backwards. Twisted. They restrained Keller. He bit through the canvas gag. Broke 2 ribs on the medic who tried to sedate him. His veins turned black. So they brought in an old chaplain, a Polish rabbi who'd survived Warsaw. He wasn't part of the military chain of command. No uniform. Just a beard and a cane and a look in his eyes that said he'd already seen hell twice. He called it Kli Hashika, Grandpa said. The vessel of forgetting. A dybbuk? I asked. Older, he said. A thing born from mass death. It looks for broken people, empty ones, and fills them. Ben leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. And the spoon? A relic, Grandpa answered. Made by the Vilna mystics. One of 13 tools forged to drain the hollow. Meant to contain the spirit. Why did you keep it? Ben snapped. Why didn't you destroy it? Grandpa didn't flinch. Because we did destroy it. The silence that followed felt ancient. Grandpa's eyes went far away again. He spoke without moving his lips. We burned Keller's body. Buried the spoon in salt and iron and forgot about it. The trench collapsed. No more screaming. No more dreams. But something, he looked toward the guest room. Something dug it up. Later that day, Eliana spoke again. Only this time she was herself, or close enough. She asked for water, hugged her mother, blinked when the sunlight hit her eyes like she hadn't felt warmth in days. But when I tried to speak to her, just say hi, she looked at me strangely, like she knew me. No, not me, my blood. That night I couldn't sleep again. I sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders, staring at the tin box on the table. Grandpa was asleep in his chair finally, his breathing shallow but steady. Ben was in the study with Mr. Roth, arguing about whether to bring in professionals. Mrs. Roth had taken Eliana to the bathroom, humming softly as they walked. I don't know what made me do it, but I opened the box. Just a crack. Inside was the spoon, still wrapped, still humming. And something else. A letter. Folded, yellowed, edges brittle with age. I unfolded it. It was addressed to Saul Cohen, my grandfather, from Rabbi Isserman. dated February 1945, read, "If the vessel cracks, do not bury it. Feed it light, not earth. The hollow does not sleep. It waits." Part 4. Feed it light. It began with the lights. The next morning, every bulb in the apartment had dimmed to a dull amber hue. Not out, just sick, like the whole place had jaundice. Ben changed them, of course. New bulbs, different brands. Didn't matter. They still faded. So we lit candles. That helped. A little. But that's when the cold came. There was no draft. No broken windows. But the air inside felt brittle, like the whole apartment had fallen a few degrees below freezing. My breath fogged when I walked down the hall. The walls seemed closer, the ceiling lower, and then came the scratching. It started beneath the floorboards in the living room, right where Eliana had collapsed. Soft at first, barely noticeable, but it grew louder, more insistent, like something with nails. Eliana wouldn't talk about the night before, not to anyone. She'd wake up screaming sometimes, short, sharp shrieks that cut off mid-breath. Other times she'd sit silently for hours, watching the corner of the ceiling like someone was whispering her name from the plaster. Mrs. Roth did what she could, but the weight of fear was wearing on her. I saw her crying in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. Ben brought in a scholar, Rabbi Asher Klein, old, rail-thin with eyes like storm clouds. He came in clutching a worn satchel and a leather-bound tunic so old its corners were frayed like dry leaves. He shook my hand without looking at me. Then he asked, "Where is the vessel?" Grandpa wheeled forward without a word and handed him the box. Rabbi Klein opened it slowly, muttering under his breath. When he unwrapped the spoon, he went still. Then he laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You idiots kept it intact." Ben bristled. "What were we supposed to do? Throw it away?" Klein looked up, voice calm and cutting. "Yes." Over tea, he told us the rest of the story Grandpa had only hinted at. The Kli Hashika, the vessel of forgetting, was one of the chevrim, objects left over from a time before memory. Not created, left behind. The spoon wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even a tool. It was a reminder, a scar. One of 13 relics used to mark places where the veil broke, Klein said. They were never meant to be kept, only used, then buried in flame. He looked toward Eliana's room. When you keep the scar, you invite the wound to reopen. Ben paced the kitchen. "We can't destroy it now," he said. "It's tied to her. Every time we try to move it too far, she collapses." "She's tethered," Klein agreed, "like a soul half planted in two fields. One of flesh, one of ash." I leaned forward. "How do we untether her?" Klein looked at me with the tired patience of someone who'd seen too many questions and too few answers. "You don't. Not unless she gives it up willingly." That night I sat with Eliana. She was on the couch, knees tucked beneath her, staring at the lit menorah we'd placed on the coffee table. Not because it was Hanukkah, just the candles help. "The light keeps them out," she whispered. I nodded. "That's what Rabbi Klein said." She turned to me. "No, he's wrong." I blinked. "About what?" "They don't hate the light. They eat it." Something moved beneath the couch. We both heard it. A soft, scraping sound. Wood bending. A dull thump from beneath the floor. Eliana didn't flinch. She closed her eyes and began to hum. Slow. A lullaby, maybe. Something ancient. I didn't recognize the melody, but it chilled me, like something not meant to be remembered. The candle closest to her flickered. Its flame pulled sideways like it was being inhaled. Eliana opened her eyes. "Don't let it take him," she said. "Who?" She looked toward the hallway. "Your grandfather." I ran. Didn't think. Didn't hesitate. Just bolted for Grandpa's room, heart thundering in my chest. The hallway felt longer than it should have, each step dragging like I was running underwater. I burst through the door. He was asleep, but his mouth was open, and something black was dripping from it. It wasn't liquid, not really, more like smoke, but it clung to his lips, oozing like oil, forming tendrils that stretched toward the ceiling. I flipped on the light. It exploded. The darkness vanished. Grandpa jolted awake, choking, gasping for air. He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let it sing," he rasped. "That's how it finds the shape again." Ben and Klein rushed in seconds later. I told them everything. Eliana's warning, the black mist, the breaking bulb. Klein went still. Then he said something I didn't understand. "Lod Srika Guff, Srika Zimra." Ben translated, "It doesn't need a body, it needs a song." We moved Grandpa to the kitchen that night, left all the lights on, candles too. Eliana didn't speak again, but she sat close to the box, her hands folded in her lap, like she was guarding it, or keeping it asleep. Klein placed salt in the corners of each room. Then he handed me a book. "Watch for symbols," he said. "It leaves signs before it takes shape." I flipped through the pages. Symbols burned into trees, chalk marks in old trenches, Hebrew runes twisted out of order, and one I recognized, drawn into the condensation on the bathroom mirror that morning, the spiral, but not perfect, off-center, like it had been drawn by a hand that didn't remember being human. That night I dreamed. I stood in a trench, deep and narrow. The walls breathed. Beneath my feet something moved. I looked down, hands reaching up from the mud, felt thin, fingernails black. They gripped my ankles, and then I heard it, a lullaby, sung backward. I woke up screaming, but only Eliana was there. She handed me the spoon. "Tell it a story," she said. "A true one." I stared at her, confused. "What?" "If you want it to leave, you have to remind it who it was." She pressed the cold metal into my hand, because that's the only thing stronger than forgetting. Part 5. The story that was stolen. The next morning I skipped school. No one said anything. Not Ben. Not Mom, she hadn't called in days. Even Grandpa didn't argue. I just grabbed my backpack, shoved the spoon inside, wrapped in an old t-shirt, and left. I wasn't going far. Just to the library. Not the modern one downtown with glass walls and touchscreen checkouts. No, I needed dust. I needed paper that creaked when you turned the page. I needed silence thick enough to feel haunted. Temple Beth Hillel's private archive fit the bill. Rabbi Klein had given me access. Said if I wanted to find the soul that was trying to wear Eliana like a coat, I'd need to look in the cracks. In the gaps between records, he'd said. That's where the hollow nests. I didn't know what I was looking for, so I started with names. Keller Jacob, Ardennes, 1945, 13th Infantry Division. There wasn't much. A brief mention in a deployment manifest. One blurry photo, 4 soldiers lined up in the snow, faces obscured by fog and motion blur. But one thing stuck. Next to Keller's name was a Hebrew word, handwritten in the margin in faded ink. Machazik. I didn't know it. I copied it down anyway. Back home, things were unraveling. Ben was pacing non-stop, snapping at anyone who spoke above a whisper. Grandpa had stopped eating. Eliana hadn't blinked in over 2 hours, and the scratching was back, louder, hungrier. I cornered Rabbi Klein in the hallway after lunch. "What's Machazik?" I asked. He froze. "Where did you see that word?" "In a military record, next to Keller's name." Klein looked pale. "It means bearer." but in some contexts, it means anchor. I swallowed. Anchor for what? He didn't answer, just said, if he was an anchor, then the hollow didn't choose him. It was sealed in him. That changed everything. What if Keller wasn't possessed? What if he was a container? A prison? And when he died, the prison cracked. I went back to the photo. Zoomed in. Enhanced. Even though the faces were blurry, one detail was crystal clear. Keller had something in his hand. Not a rifle. Not a map. A spoon. The same spoon. Eliana's not possessed, I told Grandpa that night. He sat in silence, wrapped in 2 blankets, his eyes sunken. She's just close enough to remember. He turned to me slowly. To remember what? I placed the spoon on the table between us. The story. The one Keller never got to finish. Grandpa's hands trembled as he reached for the spoon. His fingertips brushed the metal like it might bite him. I was supposed to write it down, he said. That's what Rabbi Isserman told me. Record the memory before it fades. That's how you seal it. He looked up at me, eyes wet. But I was a coward. Eliana entered the room. Silent. Barefoot. Wearing the same red dress she'd been found in at the mall. She sat on the floor next to Grandpa's wheelchair and folded her legs beneath her. Tell it, she said. Not to Grandpa. To me. I didn't know where to begin. So I opened my notebook. Pulled out the photo. The copied notes. The twisted lullaby Eliana had hummed backwards. I took a deep breath and started. Keller was born in 1924, somewhere in Brooklyn. Oldest of 3. His father owned a textile shop. His mother played the violin. He spoke 5 languages by the time he turned 15. No one moved. The day after Crystal knocked, he punched his principal in the face for calling Jews filthy. That's when he enlisted. Lied about his age. Got sent to Belgium. I looked at Eliana. She was breathing slow. Come. The night he died, he volunteered to search the trench no one else would enter. They said it sang. Like a mouth in the dirt. Grandpa closed his eyes. He went down at dusk. Never came back up. I paused. But something did. The candle nearest us flickered. The spoon hummed. And Eliana opened her mouth. He carried it, she said. Yes, I whispered. He carried it until it was too heavy. Until the silence inside him got louder than his own thoughts. And now, she asked. I looked down at the spoon. It's trying to sing again. Ben stepped in from the hallway. What are you doing? Finishing the story, I said. He stared at the scene. Grandpa in his chair, Eliana on the floor, me holding the spoon like a microphone. This is madness, he muttered. Maybe, I said. But madness remembers. That night the spiral came back. Drawn in ashes on the front door. Klein erased it with salt. Lit a candle in every window. But I knew the hollow wasn't in the walls. It was in us. In the pieces of Keller's story we hadn't told yet. So I kept writing. Page after page. The trench. The burial. The botched exorcism. The day Grandpa broke rank and ran. Each detail, each truth stitched something closed. Eliana smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Just a little. And the scratching stopped. For now. But in the morning, I found something outside my bedroom window. Pressed into the snow. A set of footprints. Bare. Child-sized. But walking away from the house. Not toward it. Part 6. The field that forgets. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Ben. Not Grandpa. Not even Eliana. I just packed a duffel bag, stuffed the spoon deep inside, grabbed the letter from Rabbi Isserman, and booked a red-eye flight to Brussels. Belgium in December is gray and miserable. Snow hangs in the air but never lands. The sky looks like it's forgotten how to shine. I rented a car, drove east. The further I got from the city, the more the road seemed to disappear behind me. No tire tracks, no cell service, just trees tall and wrong. They leaned toward each other like they were whispering. I parked at the edge of a field I found on an old wartime map. Unmarked, no buildings, no signs, but there was a trench, or rather the ghost of one. A shallow, sagging dip in the earth, lined with rocks like teeth, overgrown, half-frozen, but unmistakable. Even the trees stopped short of it, circling like sentinels that refused to enter. This was where Keller died, and maybe something else was born. I climbed down. The moment my boots hit the bottom, the world went silent. No wind, no birds, no breath. The spoon in my bag began to hum. I didn't know what I was looking for, but then I saw it. Etched into the frost-covered soil, barely visible but deliberate, was a spiral. The same one from the mirror, from the ashes, but this one wasn't drawn by a child. It was deeper, sharper, as if something had clawed it from underneath. At the center sat a stone, flat, unmarked, but warm. I touched it, and the world changed. I was back in the trench, but it wasn't broken, overgrown, or abandoned. It was full. Soldiers ran past me. Shouts in English and German collided in the air. Shells exploded above like screaming stars. And in the center stood Keller, alive, sort of. His uniform was torn. Mud caked every inch of him. But his eyes, they were black. Not evil, not angry, empty, like his soul had been evicted. He held the spoon like a compass, spinning it slowly as if waiting for it to point at something, or someone. Then he looked right at me. "You shouldn't be here," he said. I tried to speak, but the air felt thick, like trying to shout underwater. "I didn't forget," I managed. His head tilted. "You're not a bearer." "I'm a witness," I said, "and I came to finish your story." He stepped forward. "I wasn't the first," he whispered. "I was just the weakest." Behind him, the trench rippled. The wall stretched like flesh. Faces pressed out of the mud, gaping mouths, lidless eyes, hands that clawed for light. "They fed on silence," Keller said, "and I gave them quiet." I reached for the spoon. "I'm not quiet." The ground cracked. A sound like splitting bone echoed through the trench. From the soil rose a shape, thin, tall, robed in something that looked like smoke woven into skin. It had no face, only a hole, a hollow, in its center. "You brought it with you," Keller said, voice trembling. "It followed the spoon." "No," he corrected. "It followed you." The hollow stepped forward and sang, not a song of melody, a memory. Each note carried pain, like a needle pushing into forgotten wounds. I dropped to my knees, clutching my ears. Blood poured from my nose. My teeth ached. "Make it stop," I screamed. "You can't silence it," Keller said, "but you can teach it to remember." I pulled the letter from Rabbi Isserman from my coat, unfolded it, read the lines out loud. "Feed it light, not earth. Remind it what it lost." I held the spoon toward the hollow and shouted. Keller was not forgotten. The hollow recoiled. Its song stuttered. The faces in the mud shrieked. I kept going. He was a son, a linguist, a soldier who walked into hell for his brothers. The hollow howled, but it sounded like grief. I pressed the spoon into the stone at the spiral's center. The humming became a pulse. Light poured from the metal, dim at first, then golden, then blinding. Keller stepped forward. He smiled. Not wide, not eerie, just peaceful. "I remember," he said, and vanished. The hollow crumbled, not shattered, not burned, just fell apart, like ash remembering it used to be fire. The trench faded around me. I was back in the present, snow falling lightly, and the spiral was gone. I flew home 2 days later. The spoon, now cold and quiet, stayed in the bottom of my bag. I wasn't sure if it was still a relic or just metal now, but when I walked through the front door, Eliana was waiting. She looked healthier, eyes clearer, skin warmer. She ran up and hugged me, tight and long, like someone who finally woke from a nightmare. "It stopped," she said. "What did?" "The song." Grandpa cried when he saw me, not because I was back, because he knew something had changed. "The weight's gone," he whispered. "Not gone," I corrected. "Just carried by someone else now." Part 7. The weight that lingers. The scratching never came back. No more shadows beneath the floorboards. No humming from the spoon. No spiral in the mirror. But peace doesn't feel like peace when you're used to tension. Feels like the eye of the storm. Ben tried to pretend everything was normal. He went back to leading services at the synagogue, wore suits again, laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. But his hands trembled when he lit candles. Grandpa no longer told stories. He just sat in his chair near the window, staring outside, watching the sky turn colors he no longer named. Sometimes he would whisper Keller's name under his breath like it was part of a prayer or a penance. I think he knew he'd survived something he wasn't supposed to. And Eliana was different. Not worse, not broken, but changed. She didn't speak much. She didn't play, but she listened to music again. Soft, strange music from dusty vinyls. Once I asked her why. Because songs are stories you can sing when you're afraid to remember. One afternoon, I found her in the garden behind the apartment. She was crouched near a patch of dirt, poking small holes with a stick. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Planting light," she said. There were no seeds, no bulbs, just earth and silence. "You think it'll grow?" I asked. She nodded. "If it remembers how." That night I had a dream. Not a nightmare. Just a place. A room with no doors, no windows, just shelves lined with jars of smoke. Each one whispered something I couldn't quite hear. In the center stood a boy, Keller. His face was clear now. Human. Young. He held one jar and nodded to me. "You took the story," he said. "Now keep it." I woke up with the spoon in my hand. I had left it sealed in a drawer across the room. Now it was warm. Klein called the next day. He said the spiral had appeared again. Not here, but in Vilnius, on the wall of an abandoned mikveh. He sounded tired, resigned. "It doesn't end," he said. "You closed one mouth, Daniel, but the earth has many." I sat with that for hours, looking at the spoon, thinking about Eliana, Grandpa, the trench. Was this all just the beginning? I finally spoke to Eliana about it, told her the truth, that the hollow might still be out there, that there might be others, that we weren't special, just caught in the right place at the wrong time. She didn't cry, didn't tremble. She just nodded and said, "Then we tell the others." That's when I started writing it all down. Not just for me, not for Ben, not even for Grandpa, but for anyone who finds themselves staring into a mirror and seeing a spiral that doesn't belong. You might ask why I keep the spoon. Why not bury it? Burn it? Because forgetting isn't the same as healing. Keller wasn't destroyed by what he carried. He was destroyed because he carried it alone. So if you're reading this, if your floorboards creak louder than they should, if your light bulbs keep dying even when they're new, if your child starts humming a song they've never heard, don't run. Don't pray it away. Don't pretend it isn't real. Sit down, light a candle, and tell the story. because the hollow only wins when we forget. Part 8. The Song That Remains. A year passed. The spoon stayed in my drawer, wrapped in flannel, buried beneath notebooks, not humming, not warm, just there. A story with no voice. I graduated high school. Eliana moved back to New Jersey with her parents. We still wrote to each other. Actual letters, pen on paper. She said the screens made her feel watched. She was doing better, smiling more, even joining a music club. I still remember the melody she wrote once, but now I'm the one singing it. Grandpa passed in February. In his sleep, peacefully, Ben said, he left me a box, not the one with the spoon, a different one. Inside was a cassette tape, unlabeled, and a note. Don't forget the sound of silence. I didn't listen to it at first. It sat on my desk for weeks. Then one night I couldn't sleep. The city was too quiet. The lights in my apartment flickered, even though the wiring was new. So I played the tape. It started with breathing, shallow, raspy. Then Grandpa's voice. Saul Cohen, February 1945. If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't carry it anymore. He paused. You'll need to finish what I started. There was a long silence. Then music, a slow, low hum. Familiar. The lullaby Eliana had sung in reverse. Only now it was forward, clear, unbroken. And that's when I heard the whisper. Not from the tape, from my window, just outside. My apartment's on the 6th floor. I froze. The whisper came again, soft. Syllables in a tongue I didn't know but understood. I stood slowly, walked to the window, and there, pressed against the glass, was a spiral, drawn in fog. From the outside, I grabbed the spoon, unwrapped it, felt its weight. No hum, just cold metal. But then, it pulsed. What? Like a heartbeat. The lights went out, not just in my room, the whole building. Darkness swelled in the corners like smoke rising from a long-dead fire. And in that silence I heard it, the voice, but not Keller's, not Eliana's, not mine. Older, deeper, hungrier. You told the story, it said. I turned toward the sound. The spiral was glowing now, dim orange against the black window. That was the deal, I said, gripping the spoon. The story ends. You leave. It laughed, not cruelly, almost sadly. There is no end, it whispered. Only echoes. The floor beneath me creaked, not like wood, like ribs cracking underfoot. I backed away. You can't take me, I said. It didn't argue. It just sang. One note. Hollow. The sound of memory being scraped from the inside of a skull. I dropped the spoon, covered my ears, fell to my knees. But then, another voice rose behind it. Clear, bright, steady. It was Eliana, singing the same song. In harmony, the two melodies collided. The hollow's dissonant wail, Eliana's quiet defiance, and somewhere between them, silence, but not empty, full. A silence that remembered. The window cracked. The spiral shattered like glass under pressure. Light bled in, white and gold and warm. The darkness screamed once more and fled. Gone. Not dead, but distant. Pushed back. I lay on the floor until morning. When I stood, the spoon was gone. Only a single word remained, etched into the frost on the floor. Witness. Now, I keep 2 candles lit in my apartment at all times. I never whistle in the dark. And I always finish a story once I begin it, because stories are stitches, and forgetting is how the wound reopens. I don't know where the hollow went. Maybe another trench, another soul, another house filled with half-told songs. But I do know this. If it comes again, we'll be ready. Because now the silence doesn't just watch, it listens.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.